This is Joyful, Happiness Movement and Podcast. I discover the science behind happiness and well-being, and through sharing stories, I am searching for the secrets to a happier life. You can find two types of episodes on our platforms, guest series and solo episodes. In our guest series, I will be meeting with experts who share their knowledge or experiences, contributing to a better understanding of a happier life. The solo episodes are divided into series of 5 episodes in each series, as in each episode I will talk about a topic related to one of the 5 pillars of happiness that we've designed at Joyful. If you're curious to know what are those 5 pillars, I invite you to check out our Instagram page. I hope you're ready, as it's time to be joyful. In today's episode, I meet with Fiona Beenkens, a neuroarchitect. Fiona transformed her career path, and being quite unhappy working as an architect, she started to shape her way through as a neuroarchitect. Today, she uses her knowledge from psychology and architecture to help people create homes and other spaces that can make them feel better in their daily lives. Fiona is a very dynamic and engaged person with deep grounded knowledge. I admire her passion, dedication, and faith with which she engages in her work to help people make their environments more beautiful and better suited for their lifestyles. I hope you'll enjoy our talk and leave a comment if you'd like to add something to our discussion. Fiona, thank you for agreeing to meet me here at Joyful Podcast. I'm really excited to talk to you, and I hope it will be an interesting conversation for both of us.
Thank you for having me.
First, I wanted to ask you whether your friends and family are afraid of inviting you over to their places because they are afraid of your judgment, or maybe they are very happy to listen to your advice and they are very happy to have you and have you tell them what is it that they should change.
It's a really funny first question.
Yeah.
Definitely, I would rather say that many friends, I wouldn't say family, but friends, are afraid to have me over.
Mm-hmm.
Then once we start talking, they understand that there's nothing they should be afraid about because I'll never judge. And that's something that's super important in the work I do.
Mm-hmm.
There is no judgment, there's nothing that's right or wrong. It's just our homes are a reflection of who we are, of how we function, of what we need. And so you wouldn't judge a home as if you wouldn't judge someone that's going through something. So once they start understanding that I'm not here really to judge, it starts being okay to invite me over. But definitely there is something about that.
Yeah, I thought so. I mean, also when I have a friend who is a cook, it's the same thing that when you want to invite him over for dinner, then suddenly stressed because does this professionally. So you're just kind of afraid that he would judge the way you cook, or in your case, the way you live. But yeah, I understand. It's totally not what is it all about. So could you tell me what is it that you do, and what exactly is neuroarchitecture?
With pleasure. So I'm an architect and I'm working, as you said, with neuroarchitecture. Basically, that means that it's about analyzing how the brain reacts to space. So we have forms of stress, that's something that we all know about, and our brain reacts to space and also can produce some stress hormones related to space because it feels like there could be danger somewhere, because it's all linked to survival instincts and how we function with really a part of our brain that's linked to survival. And the idea is to start organizing space for us to be way less stressed and for space to not be one more stress factor. So that's really a summary of neuroarchitecture. It's way more complex than that, but basically I always say that neuroarchitecture is the science behind our intuition. It's like how to explain that actually we react and we have emotions related to spaces, but basically we wouldn't really need science to know that because we've always reacted to space. That's just like how we function.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, that's neuroarchitecture, and so I started working with that with as main characteristic, I would say, that my work is to correct design. So it's going to be to correct plans for people that are going to have their homes, for people that are going to have workspaces, and actually everything that's related to the built environment. My work is going to see, okay, are these plans okay for your brain? Are these plans and how everything is organized okay for your well-being? And yeah, I can say that that's the core of my work.
So, do you think that it's more about? So, currently, your work is more related to architecture or interior design? How would you differentiate the two?
It's a bit of both. I would say that without my architecture degree, I'm not sure I would be able to do the work I do because there are really some structural work in the process. I'm going to give an example. Um, Before, when I started working with well-being in the homes, I started literally with people that had problems. They would call me because their child wouldn't sleep, because they wouldn't sleep, because they would have headaches in their home. So they would really call me with a specific problem, but that would also say that they had their homes. They were not constructing or renovating. It was really like, I've tried everything. Could it be that my home is a problem? I'll call the neuroarchitect. And then I would get to the home and I would say, I'm sorry, but I have no solution for you, because we should have put the door at the other side of the bedroom. We should have, this window should have been in a different way. And then I would just arrive and say, I'm sorry, there is no option because it should have been done by the architect on forehand.
Yeah.
But architects are not educated with these principles. So that's why today I would say that I work way more with plans and with construction. And that's really architecture, because it's about choosing where the bathroom is going to be and why it would be better to put it on the left corner than on the right corner. It would
Yeah.
be about why would it be better to have the child's bedroom downstairs or upstairs, would be things like that. And then, of course, I also work a lot with interior architecture, and there it's more about really a therapeutic side of architecture, where I'll really deep dive into someone and how someone functions and how someone feels and how their home is a reflection of that. And then we'll enter in colors, in materials, in something that's way more profound than structure.
Okay, cool. That sounds super interesting. And I think also novel, right? Because I think that it's quite novel as a field.
Yeah.
Could you perhaps tell me how did your adventure with this in this
Get
area even started? Yeah.
Um, yeah, of course. Well, I've been through, as many people, I think, a burnout pretty on a pretty young age. I've always known that I wanted to be an architect. That was super clear. But then, you don't really think about it, and it just you arrive in the studies, and it was kind of nothing I had imagined. And I'm not sure what I had imagined, but it wasn't
Yeah.
that. And so I've gone through a personal, quite hard time with physical issues and everything we can think about. And so at some point, I really thought, I'm not sure I'm made to be an architect anyways, because no one understands me, because I don't feel like I fit in. But the problem back then was I couldn't tell why I didn't fit in. I just felt I didn't fit in, but I had no explanation. I didn't know what I wanted to do in life. I couldn't really explain why I didn't like architecture. It's not like I could say, this is something that teachers thought I wouldn't agree, so I hated architecture. There wasn't something that was clear
Mm.
at that moment. So I switched because I was in a really bad place. I had really to take care of myself, of my own stress hormones. And then what really made the click for me was a therapeutic session with a hypnotherapist.
Mm-hmm.
So someone that practices hypnosis. And I really didn't really believe it could do something. It's just, when you don't know what to do anymore to to feel
Yeah.
better. And at that moment, something switched in my body that was really, really mind blowing. Like, it's like you can imagine someone working on an issue for 2 years, nothing works, and then you have 60 minutes of session, and the morning after, something is really like it's gone. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was like, that means that my subconscious mind, that there is something in my brain that I'm not understanding. That means that we miss something. And that's when really I got obsessed by the brain, by the unconscious mind, by why is my body related to my brain. And then I have a thinking brain, and then I have a brain that's like not thinking what's the link. And I quit architecture for a moment. I really did, because it was just, I liked the body, the mind, the human being way too much to be busy with architecture. For me, it was just not what I wanted to do. And then life went on, and then COVID happened. And COVID was really a moment that everything had to stop, and that people actually understood how important their homes were and the impact on their well being. And that's, I think, the moment that it switched in me, that I didn't really have to make a choice between architecture and well-being, and that I could just like, yeah, go with both. And since the job I wanted to do didn't really exist on the market,
Mm,
because of course there's feng shui. I don't know if you know a bit about that, but it's like feng shui is about well-being in the homes. That's
yeah.
like more in Asia, but still it's not really a job, it's not really recognized. So I felt like if I wanted to work with what I love, I had to create my own job. So as soon as I had my degree, I started creating what I'm doing today.
Well, it must have been difficult, right? Did you find anyone to guide you, or did you do it all by yourself?
I haven't done it all by myself. I mean, creating my own business, I definitely did, because I mean, I didn't know how to start, I didn't know how to
Yeah.
do it. But I've been meeting the right people at the right times. So, I mean, I haven't learned it all by myself. It hasn't been like just coming, I didn't invent anything. I mean, I
Yeah.
just had different courses and then I brought them together and I
Mhm.
started proposing something to someone, saying, look, I feel like we could do better with your plans, do you want me to help you? And then that started being a service, and then things just, once you start, they just come. But I definitely don't feel like I've been alone in a journey.
Yeah, that's so cool that you happen to actually find what you like and yeah, felt motivated enough to pursue it. And from what I can see, it's going quite well, right?
It's great.
Um, yeah. So perhaps you can move on more into the details of what is it that you're actually working with. So about how different spaces may impact our well-being. So tell me, because there are different elements of the interiors. You have, for instance, light. Then you have colors. You have furniture placing. Do you think that one of these elements is particularly overlooked by people, so is underestimated? Which one of these would you say is the most underestimated by people?
It depends if you ask by people or by architects. I mean, I think the one that's, I'm gonna do the question the other way around,
Mhm.
the more overestimated, like the one that we pay the most attention to, is light. Everyone knows that light is super important. It can be artificial light and how we work with lighting in more white light or more yellow light, and we know that it affects our mood. That's really something that both human that have nothing to do with architecture and architects know. Same with natural light. People are just looking for natural light for as like big windows that they can have.
Yeah.
So that's really something that we're aware of. So I wouldn't say that everything is correct either in how we see these things, but
Mhm.
that's not the question. So I'll put that aside.
Yeah.
Um, but something that's really under evaluated, or I don't know how to say it, but something that is just not taken into consideration,
Yeah.
is how we place furniture in space. And
Okay.
so that means that we're just gonna place our couch or I don't know, or kitchen or bed or bath. We're just gonna place them. The architect is gonna do the plan, is gonna place them how suits them best. Sorry to say so, but they just don't have time today in their world and in their reality to start thinking about, is it better for your brain to put the bath in this direction or in this direction? And so they just draw a plan, and then everything is starting to be in construction or renovation process. And then we're going to start thinking, maybe I would rather put my couch at the other side, because now that I'm in space, I can try it out, and I'd rather have it here. But on the plans, it's drawn on the other side of the plan. But now that I'm in space, I'm going to change it. And then we can't change it anymore, because something has been done that makes it impossible, because of the door, because of the window, because of something that we just haven't thought about. So I
Mhm.
think that that's really one of the biggest issues today in what I'm working with, is that we're not thinking on forehand the space for us to feel safe. And then once it's there and it's constructed, it's too late.
And what about the places to which we move in? So all the like student apartments or just temporary apartments. What would you recommend then if furniture placement is so important?
Well, I think that there are priorities. So I'm also like in a place that's not like a place I've bought, so it's kind of the same process. And I had like a checklist, something that I knew, this is my priority. This would be okay because it's not the place I'll be in forever. And so then you have, what's really important is sleep. It's always going to be sleep. I mean, if we don't sleep correctly, and it's way more bed than we can think about today, we can't do all the rest that we want to do. And so the most important, and what I see most, are bedrooms that aren't providing restorative sleep. And people think that they do sleep correctly because they think that 8 hours of sleep without waking up is equivalent to having a good night of sleep, but it isn't. You can sleep 8 hours straight away, and yet not have like a restorative sleep. So like the most important is like really, yeah, to have a list of things that you have to match when you visit a place. And so it's really possible, but some places are not just the good ones.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, it can be difficult, especially also if you're moving a lot or if you're a young adult. Then I can imagine that you also have some financial constraints, right? So when it comes to some cost-effective solutions, what would you recommend?
Well, I'd recommend, it's hard because the market is not easy either. So it's really about finding balance, and it's not only listening to me. There are also other factors that come into consideration, as for example finances. But as I said, I'd recommend to be aware, and to try to find information about everything that I'm doing on or other people are doing in this field, and not just take a place because on paper financially it's the good one. It's not because it looks like a good opportunity that you'll feel good there. And there is really, for me, a mindset problem too. In our society, it's that I see a lot of people saying, yeah, but it's a transitory place, so it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't really matter. I project myself here for a year or two or three. So I'm not going to invest in the place. And I'm not saying like we should invest thousands of euros, but it's like even just put a color on a wall. It's like, no, I won't, because I'm not going to stay here. And for me, one of the biggest issues in well being, and I'm not the only one talking about that, is the difficulty to be in the present moment. Like we really have a difficulty to live in the present moment. We're always projecting, we live on a dopamine way of living, which means that we always want a new thing. We always wait for what's going to be next. And so we have really a problem with the present moment. And living in a place projecting that you're not going to stay there means that you're never in the present moment. And I really believe that it's what you're creating now in your reality, in your energy at the moment, that's going to give you where you want to be later, that it be in 6 months or a year or 2 years. But for me, it's where you are at now that's going to create the future. And so if you can't invest the place you're in now, you're just not creating where you want to go. And so for me, that's something that really has to change and switch in mindsets. And I understand that it's not easy to invest in a place. I see so many people saying, "Yeah, but I'm not gonna, no, I'm not going to buy that couch because maybe in my next place it won't fit because I want a bigger house next." That's just for later. Live
Yeah.
with what you have today, and then, yeah, I think that's really something that we should start considering.
Yes, this is something I can totally relate to because I've been living in my previous apartment for like 1 year and a half, and
Mhm.
so for me, like my surroundings are super important to me. So I really wanted to like decorate it and everything. And then my boyfriend was kind of being rational. He was like, "Oh, but we're only here for a moment, you know, for a while. It's only for a year or so that we're going to stay here. So it doesn't maybe make that it doesn't make much sense for us to like buy all the furniture and decoration and stuff." So we did manage to find a compromise, but still, I think that well, now I have a definitely different approach, and I would have like really decorated from the start because I think that this is if it's really this important to me, and I really can see the difference. And for me, it's like every day, you know, I'm in this environment, so I can take a look around, and it will determine whether I am happy with where I am or unhappy with where I am. So personally, I can totally relate. But yeah, could you tell me maybe from your professional point of view, in what way exactly do our spaces contribute to our well-being?
Many ways. The it's like a huge subject, so I gotta take it
Yeah.
into several points. But so we have a part of us that we call the fear, flight, or fight response. I don't know if you've heard about that, but
Yes.
to summarize, it's that whenever the body senses danger, for example, a lion's gonna run behind you in the street, whenever we sense danger, the body is going to choose, like without thinking. It's not a thinking process. It's really survival instinct. The body's going to choose, is it better to run away and run really fast? Is it better to fight? Because the body then thinks that it can fight back and win the fight. If it doesn't think that it can win the fight, it chooses another option. Or is it better to freeze, to do as if I was dead, so that I can just like try to escape the danger? These are the three only survival instincts that we have. And whatever situation stresses us out or is a danger makes one of these three responses happen within our body and our brain. Now, we also got to know that in today's society, someone that's talking, like that's aggressing you verbally, something in our job that's not going well, something that gives us a sense of frustration, is triggering exactly the same responses. Like there is no distinction between real danger and the danger that we put into our mind that could just be like, I've been late to work, am I going to be fired? It like really, yeah, it raises the same processes in the body and in the brain. And so how our space affects our well-being is that we have to make sure that our brain doesn't sense a danger in space. And so, for example, if I'm sitting here and that my front door is just behind my back, and so that means that I know no one is going to enter in my back. I mean, I'm alone. I'm alone at home. I don't have a dog, so no one can literally enter. But my unconscious mind and the survival instinct doesn't work in the same way. It's just made to protect us. So it will always stay hyper vigilant, because if something would happen, he has to give me a reflex of fighting back, of running, or to freeze. And so that's something that we're like, if we think about it, it has no sense. No one's going to enter. It's the same in, for example, open spaces. You think, I'm in an open space, I know a lot can happen behind me and many colleagues can pass behind me, but no one's going to kill me, so I'm not in danger. But that part of our unconscious mind and our reptilian brain just doesn't care. For him, it's like something can happen, danger can come, so I'm gonna be in hyper vigilance.
Mm.
And that's a real and that's really how the space affects, yeah, our stress levels or hormones. And that's where we gotta start understanding how much impact space has. And then of course that's about how we place things in space, because that means that we always should see what's coming. We also always should work with the walls behind us and really create that sense of protection. That's one thing. And then we also have color, of course, that's gonna impact a lot of how we feel. And then we have materials, and then we have five senses. Some say even that we have six senses. So everything that's gonna be touched, that's gonna be seen, that's gonna be heard, everything is a response for the body.
Mm. Okay, well, interesting. And about this, the fact that our brain our brain makes this kind of map, right, and unconsciously takes note of all the dangerous or unknown elements in our environment. But isn't it like if we are at our homes where our brain is used to this kind of map that is created for itself, then wouldn't this effect diminish? So if even I have a door in my apartment which is behind me, then isn't it like with time I will get used to it and I will consider it as a safe environment?
Your conscious mind will have, that's exactly what's happening. You're thinking about it, so you're rationalizing it. So if you think about it, you say exactly what you just said. And that's something that we have to learn. Our reptilian brain has no mind, can't not think. It's like it's just made. It's like, for example, you'd walk on the street and the sun is really really hard and intense. You'll just like close your eyes. No one has learned you that to protect your eyes you had to close them. Whereas, for example, you're going to cross the street as a child, your parents have to learn that you have to watch left and to the right
Mm.
before crossing the street. That's like a learning process. And then and later on, you just watch. But it's not a survival instinct, because if it would be a survival instinct to do that, no one would die from a car accident crossing the street at the bad timing,
Yeah.
because it wouldn't be a situation we would be in. No one ever died from a sunlight going to the eyes because we just close our eyes.
Yeah.
If you hear a noise that's really hard, you just like you protect yourself.
Mhm.
Your ears, you protect them to not hear the noise. That's something that we have never learned, because it's programmed in our cells to remember that. In
Mhm.
like the evolution of the human being, our cells remember how to be safe. Our cells know exactly what to do to be safe. And that's something that we shouldn't even think about, and we can think about. So of course that we would think, yeah, but I know my environment, I know there is no danger and no stress. But for the survival instinct, it doesn't really matter.
I understand. So it's an unconditional response of our organism, basically, that is always there, no matter what we think about it. Um,
Yes.
are there any studies that you base yourself on? Because, well, it's a very novel thing. So I can imagine that the literature is quite limited. But I don't know, could you tell me if this is more like a try and see approach, or if there is some substantial scientific evidence behind this kind of interventions?
There's a lot. When you look up neuroarchitecture, you have a lot of research of like a lot. Of course, not as much as other subjects, but you do have people that really are looking it up, and you can go way further than everything that I'm explaining. Like I'm just taking what I can take from neuroscience to be sure that we would feel right at home, at work, and at these places. But basically, you could go way further than that. So a lot of science exists, but I gotta say that's not my focus, and that's not what I want to focus on. I've always been very intuitive, and I sense people, I understand people like a therapist would do, and I think we all have that within us, but it's just a question of wanting to reach to that or not. And so my work is really based on understanding what someone needs and then translating that in the home.
Mhm.
And where I'm very grateful that architecture and that science exists is to help us understand why we react to a space in a certain way, why we feel like that, why it has impact. But I don't want to focus on that. I want to make things change. I want people to feel good. And so in that case, I would rather say that my work today is really on trial error, seeing how someone, if I mean, my only goal is going to someone, sensing and understanding a problem and something that's not working, doing something in the home, and then having a message like, let it be 3 months, 6 months, 2 years later with something that has changed. And for me, that's like the best
Mhm.
science that I can have.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
understand.
so yeah,
Mm. And what about cases where you have clients that have certain preferences? So they may like color red and they want to paint their rooms red, or any other kind of example. But at the same time, you know that is perhaps not what's best for them. What is the right balance here? So, what is the balance between preferences and what is good for you?
that's the work. That's really my work to make sure that they understand why they shouldn't put the red color. The thing is, if I see for a specific reason, sorry, I'll do it again.
Yours.
Uh, okay, sorry. If I see for a specific reason that the red color is not the good color for them, my job is to detach them from the color. Who cares about the red color? The real question is, why is that color reinforcing something that they're living, that they're going through, that they're maybe not perceiving? And so my job is then to really let go of the architectural side and enter into what they need, and to make them understand that something has to switch. Then once they understand that and they tell me, yeah, that's something that we don't want anymore in our life, we want this to change, we don't want to feel this way anymore, then it's my job to say, well, look, the red color is going to reinforce that feeling. So it's not going to create something more, it's not going to make you be sick or even something more drastic, but it's just going to keep you within that energy. And as from this discussion, I feel like you don't want to stay in that energy anymore. So shouldn't we choose another color? And if it's brought like that, and that people understand that it's never really about what we see, what we like, what we rationalize, of course, we have two sides of the brain. So we do have a thinking brain. So we do have to like our place. I'm not saying that we should put colors or materials that we don't like, because it's important that we please the eye. When we get in, it's also a sense. The sense of seeing is super important as well, but it shouldn't be against our well-being. And that's something then that we can find the right balance. When once clients understand it's not the right choice for them, then it's about, okay, but then what is, and how are we gonna make you like it? And that's
Mhm.
my job gets a bit more tricky, but that's also what I like about it.
Yeah, and are there some universals that work for everyone, or is it very person cut out for a specific person?
There's no rules.
Okay.
Like, of course, every color or every material has a symbol, like, yeah, a kind of symbolism. You can try dig deeper and have like a general understanding of a color or a situation, but no one's gonna live it in the same way, because we've all had another childhood, for example. So that means that we have different memories that are stored in our brain, that we will react to a color in a certain way, but our neighbor might react in another way. So we do have like a baseline, like I would say a basic theory, but it's never the same for two different people, because also of the available space. It's not because you like red, I like red, that we want to put the red color on the same wall in the same space. So it doesn't mean the same thing, of course. If you want red in your bedroom, it's not the same red as if I want red in my bedroom. So yeah, no, definitely I've never had two times the same case. And I think that I'm more like a therapist architect, and I think that every therapist will tell you I've never had two times the same story. And I'm seeing a lot of plans, because as I'm doing consultation and really like advice on plan, that means that I have many people that come over. We have like a one-time session and like on their plans. So it's true that in comparison with other architects, I see a lot of plans, because I don't have to stay 2 years on the same plan. And I can tell you, I've never seen two times the same plan. And every architect will tell you, except if they really have to do like, a big building with the same plans. But otherwise, you wouldn't have two times the same plans.
Yeah.
That's a, yeah.
Well, I'm happy that we've kind of oriented towards color, because this is also something that I wanted to discuss with you.
Yeah.
As me myself professionally, I now study color as I'm doing my PhD in this domain. I wanted to ask you about your professional perspective on this, because, well, if you're doing research, then there are a lot of limitations and a lot of problems when it comes to, for instance, measuring the effects of color. So, what we know so far is that, for instance, there are certain associations people have with colors, which are kind of cultural, but there might be also some kind of perceptual aspect of this. So, what do you think from your work? What is the role of color in our environment? Can color actually make us feel a certain way, or how do you feel? How do you think that you use color to make the places better?
Well, that color can make us feel a certain way is not something that we should discuss anymore, because it's proven, and a lot of it's researched. Like, we just know that there's a part of our brain that's called like the hypothalamus, and that's the one that's regulating our entire nervous system, or like body temperature or sleep. A lot of things are regulated by the hypothalamus, and it's the hypothalamus that receives color through the eye. So that means that exactly the same space in our brain is responsible for, and like, filtering the color and or sleep regulation or temperature regulation. So it's just so logical that we react to color in a certain way, and that a color has an influence on our body and our way of living. It's really something today that I'm happy about, because it's research, it's proven. But basically, we could go back to what, as I said, just how we feel and our intuition. We are connected to nature. That's just how we are as human beings, and the colors are everywhere in nature. So it's so easy in between, like, of course it's more difficult than that, but it's so easy to understand that we react to color. If we go back to how our ancestors worked, how they functioned, a lot was like about working with colors in their environment, like trying to hide. Like, if you look at animals, their color change in function of how they have to be protected from predators and these things. So colors are really something that we have within us since the start of human being. And in our environments, there's so many things we could say about color. It's really a never-ending subject. And of course, that there is a difference between living in a place with only white walls. The white color is related to the ice and to the snow, so it's a color that the body takes as a really cold color. There is a big difference between living in four white walls and living in a place with a red color. Does that mean that one is better than the other? Not especially. It depends on what you need and how you function on and that's where I think that we shouldn't think that color is a theory, and we shouldn't say like this color has this meaning and so we should take this color, because it's way more complex than that.
And is it about a color, or is it really about the composition of them that you think bring the effect?
It's really about the vibration of the color in the first place, but a color is there is a composition in a color. So you're gonna say that, for example, a color is yellow, but if there is a huge amount of percentage of black in the color, it might be more towards a black color and a black vibration than a yellow, like more sun vibration. So of course there's what we see, and then there's also what we say. That's something that's not taken into consideration. That also explains why every culture will have another impact on color. I cannot speak for example, I don't know, people that speak another language might have another
Yeah.
reaction to a color because of what we've said since that we were born. And if you look at, for example, the black color, think about all the expressions that we have on the black color. Like it's seeing things in black, it's written black on white, it's like being a black sheep. It's
Yeah.
I don't have like more than that like right now, but the black color, for example, in our languages is a color that's really associated to something very heavy. Maybe in other languages it's something super light. Then we cannot consider it the same. In our culture, when we are mourning and that someone is dead, the black color is what comes first, and it's what people need, and it's like what we wear at funerals. So
Mhm.
that means that we have a link to the black that maybe other cultures might not have. So that's, yeah, of course that color has a huge impact, but it will just depend on many factors that we're not taking into consideration. And that's really important to see, okay, how are we using color in our culture, in
Yeah.
our evolution, in our vocabulary, and what was the link with our ancestors and the survival instinct. And so
Yeah.
of course a green color that was everywhere in nature has another impact than yeah, a black color that was a color that was used to hide, for example, you know.
Just a quick break. If you would like to engage in a small act of kindness yourself, go and follow us on Instagram. It will help us grow and develop this initiative. You can find us under the name Joyful, that's spelled with 10 U's. And if you're feeling particularly generous today, consider rating our podcast on the platform you're using to listen to us. It only takes a few seconds of your time, but it will bring a huge smile to our faces. Enjoy the rest of the show. Yeah, but so how do you dissociate? Because if black, for instance, have all these negative connotations, it doesn't really mean that you would not use it in a space, because in a certain environment, it can also have a meaning of elegance, right? So do you think that it's like, which of the elements would you take then when you're designing a space?
I would just listen to the person. I
Hmm.
would just, that's something I'll always go back to that. And that's maybe sometimes frustrating because there is no answer. And I know that sometimes you want an answer, but I cannot give an answer.
Yeah.
um, it's that we have to dissociate space as being what's important. It's never about the space, it's always about the person
Hmm.
and what they want. So if the goal is to have a 5-star hotel and to have many luxury people come, of course I might propose black. If the goal is to be better, to feel good on a personal level, I won't propose black, and I will say that it's not the best choice, and it's totally fine to say so. So that's why I'm not going to say mad, but that's why I don't agree with books that I can read on the psychology of color or things that I can see around me on the psychology of color. Is that there is a color and it symbolizes something.
Hmm.
And then there are some examples. And it's great and it's true and nothing is wrong, but it's not what it should be about. It's never
Hmm.
about the color itself. It's about what someone needs, how someone feel, and what the color can then create as a reaction to that.
Mm. Well, it makes sense, and it's true that in psychology, yeah, in psychology there is this kind of, but I think it just comes with being scientific, and like when you're doing science, you really need this kind of clear definitions and like evidence, and then statistical proofs and so on. And this is kind of constraining at some points, like here, for instance. But on the other hand, it's some factual knowledge that we gain, but I understand that in your work it's not the most important thing. Actually, like what you're looking for is to help people. And it's the same thing with psychotherapy, that science has limited evidence on the way it works, because science has, unfortunately, its limitations. um,
Exactly. And I think that's also something that we can like be okay with. It's and that's also something that we should understand. It's because of our rational mind that we need science so much. It's because we want to understand. And science always comes after a feeling. Science comes always after this is happening. Why is it happening? So it's like if we would see the body and the brain, it would be like something happens in the body, happens in the subconscious mind. And as we are animals don't need to understand because they don't have a neocortex and a rational brain. But as human beings, we need to understand. But sometimes I think we should go back to finding balance and saying, okay, maybe there is no perfect rule or there is not one thing. It's just there is something that we see, that we feel, and that we might connect to. And in terms of color, I understand the need to understand, but it's like a health issue. There is just not one issue is never the same on two people,
Hmm.
and
Okay.
that's something that's very important.
You mentioned at the beginning of our conversation feng shui. There are different kinds of philosophies, I think, but this one seems to be particularly popular, and
Yeah,
many people talk about it. Could you explain what is feng shui, if you use it, and why?
yeah. Feng shui is like it's a technique used more in like Asia and these these kind of spaces. That's nothing about science. Like it's all about energy. It's about
Mhm.
how we feel, how we react to space, and it's like a discipline that's saying that we need the energy from outside. So like the energy that's really pure, like the life force of like what, for example, if you're gonna walk for 5 hours in the forest, you won't feel the same energy than if you walk for 5 hours in a mall, in a shopping center. It's just not the same thing. And so feng shui basically is really interesting because if we let go of all the fact that it's not science, it's not like proven and everything, we just come back to being like, okay, if we again look at our ancestors and how they functioned, they lived outside, they lived with the elements of nature. They didn't have like a fire like in their kitchen to cook. They had to work with real fire, with the real elements, and they were really connected to nature. And so where human feels best is in energy that's not polluted by the city, by the cars, by the connection and everything, the electromagnetic brainwave, the waves, and etc etc. So what feng shui says is like this energy is what we need in our homes, and since the human being today is living more than 90% of their time in the interior, whereas we have been created to live outside in the first place, how can we take that energy from outside and make it at the best we can enter in our homes? And that's where it's going to use materials, it's going to use the elements of nature, go back to like really finding balance between the elements that are like fire, water, metal, earth, and I miss one, and wood. And like it's really saying, okay, how can I find a balance, how to react to these elements? And yeah, that's basically in a resume how feng shui works.
Hmm. Do you use it a lot in your practice?
I think it has something that it should be reconsidered because we live in Europe, so it's a bit different as well. We don't have the same cultures. So, for example, Feng Shui will say that in function of your birth date, you have to sleep in one direction. That means that your husband could sleep in the other direction. That just makes no sense. And so some things are just for me, again, too theoretic, too unadapted to how we live today, and so it should be reconsidered. And many people are also thinking like, okay, if I use feng shui, I'm going to be happy. If I use feng shui, I'm going to be rich, I'm going to find the love of my life. There is so something about manifesting that's really hard with feng shui, that people think if they do it in their homes, something will happen. And basically otherwise people wouldn't do it. It's because they believe that it's going to bring them something. And that's where, for me, again, it lacks consideration of how we function, why we need something, and what's actually our personal blockage that makes us not get where we want to be. And so I use feng shui once the entire therapeutical side is done. So once I really understand my clients, once I really understand their needs, once we went through understand, okay, what's the blockage, what makes that you're not where you want to be today, and once we get that, I might use feng shui to use the right color at the right place, to use the right element at the right place, and really get that balance.
Hmm. And because since first you're really focusing on the theoretical part,
Mhm.
it means that people who come with to you, they actually have some problems, psychological problems, if I understand correctly.
We all have problems.
And so could you tell me if there are some kind of symptoms or I don't know things that we
Oh,
can notice that tell us, oh, so perhaps I should really change my flat or
no, we never. It's not about symptoms. Of course, some people come with sleep issues or things like that, but it's just
Mhm.
about like the basic introspection that every human being
Yeah.
should have. So it's just about like wanting your space and the space you live in to match your energy. And for
Mhm.
that, I have to understand how you function, how you work, and everyone has blockages. Everyone has fields in their lives that are more difficult than others. I've never met someone that had all their shit together.
Yeah.
And so the goal is for your space to just reinforce the good stuff instead of reinforcing the bad stuff.
Mhm.
But that's something about the human being. We focus on the bad things, and
Yeah.
so unconsciously we'll always make choices in our homes or in our workspaces that reflect the energy we're in. So I have many people, for example, that moved in during a burnout, and so all their choices are made on an energy that was really low. And so, of course, when you're going through a burnout, or imagine you're going through a family member that just died, and you're mourning, and then at that moment you're choosing a new living space. All you're just not gonna make choices that are related to a joyful energy, because that's just not what you're vibrating at that moment.
Yeah.
If you are feeling stuck, if you are feeling sad, you're not gonna pick like bright colors. That's just not how, it's too far away of how your energy and your vibration is at that moment. And that's where you need someone to tell you, look, maybe we're not gonna put yellow right now because it's just too far off what you feel, but there is an in between. We shouldn't reinforce the sadness that you're in. And
Mhm.
that's where homes really have, and interiors really have an impact, is that then afterwards people choose their color, choose their vibration in function of how they feel. And then they want to be better, they want to feel better, and they just can't. And they don't understand why. Because it's just repaint their entire interior. They're not going to think it's because of the color, I'm going to do it again. And so they stay sometimes for years in the same energy, and they feel stuck without understanding that it's their home that's holding them back.
Yeah. I wanted to use the opportunity that I have you here, and I wanted us to kind of go through a couple of rooms in our homes.
Yeah.
And I would like you to tell me a couple of do's and don'ts, maybe like
Yeah.
the most important ones, if that sounds okay.
Yeah, with pleasure.
So maybe let's start with the bedroom. So, what is the major don't that you say to people?
A gray bedroom. Yeah, because gray is really a color that like is used a lot in bedrooms. That's also why I say it's because like it's, yeah, I don't know, a lot of materials are okay with the gray in the bedroom, and I see it often. But the gray color is also the color of the sky that's in between the blue and the really dark, and it's like something that's really, that we see as a threat. And the bedroom is really a place that we have to take care of ourselves, that we have to be in a very gentle mode, and be like really in the present moment, and in, yeah, a kind of light feeling. And so gray bedrooms is something that I'm not gonna say I hate, but for me it's always difficult, because when I come and that the bedroom is gray, there's nothing I can do about it. Like,
Yeah.
it's a choice of materials, and I won't say to people like start over because it's gray. So I would give this tip, because then we can't go back when I see
Mhm.
it.
Yeah, I also listened to one of your interviews, I think, where you said that you shouldn't have a child's photograph on your nightstand.
Yeah, but that now you're in the bedroom, so we're switching to the bedroom then.
No,
Otherwise,
but I thought you were talking about. I mean, I asked you about bedroom.
I understood bedroom.
Okay, so we can redo.
Yeah.
That's fine. So what about bedroom?
So in the bedroom, the best tip I can give is always try to see the front door when you're lying in your bedroom, so that you can control the space. So the designs where there is a door behind you, or like a dressing room or a bathroom behind you, and that you can pass really behind your bed, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
For the
Anything else that you would recommend?
Yeah, so many things, but I'll stay with one tip, because
Hmm.
otherwise we're, yeah, going all
Okay,
around the place.
sure.
So yeah.
So now maybe we can switch to the living room.
Yeah. The living room, what could I say about the living rooms? Also so many things. A tip would be to really think the space to have a wall behind you. So I know that many people try to separate the living room from the dining room, from something else, for example. With like the couch in the middle, so that it would separate an open space. But the best is I always have a wall behind you to really feel the sense of protection. Like, for example, our ancestors were in great, when they were like protecting themselves, they went into like holes, or how do you call it, like caves,
Hmm.
they ate themselves. Well, that's kind of what we need. So we would always have to be like a wall behind us when we sit in our couch. That would be a good.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what about the kitchen? Do we show so because you say you talked a lot about open spaces, so in general you would not recommend to have open spaces, and so do you? So kitchen should be separate then from the living room, ideally.
No, again, it depends on how you function and your background. So that means that, for example, open spaces are okay. It's just you can separate spaces that are open. So you can have architectural solutions to not have like just one big open space, and have like really different territories in the space. And so you can have, for example, an open kitchen, but that's not 100% open. that's like
Mhm.
possible within the architecture. So I wouldn't say an open kitchen is for everyone something that's okay or not okay. Just for example, if you have food restrictions and that you have struggles with like a diet and that you're always in a restriction modus, that's something that's like can be very frustrating, that many human beings trouble with like their relationship to food. Then I wouldn't have an open kitchen, because that means that you're always connected to food. And
Mhm.
so when you're on your couch and that you have the kitchen within like your like literally your visual spectrum, what will happen is that your unconscious mind will start producing the hormone of being hungry. And for someone that's already like in a restriction modus, it's not a good idea. Someone that eats very intuitively, that has no trouble and nothing as a problem to relationship with food, I wouldn't have the same theory.
Okay. And what about a do in a kitchen?
A do in the kitchen would be to use the green color, because if you look at all the nutrition that's good for the body, it's always green. So that's
Mhm.
really something that the unconscious
Okay.
mind is
Okay,
being.
cool. And what about office spaces? Because nowadays also many of us work from home. So could you tell like a few sentences about how to design a workspace that it's best for our work hygiene?
Yeah, office space is also a lot to say about it, but my biggest don't would be working facing a wall, because I still have 70% of the people that I question that work facing a wall at home. I know sometimes in terms of space, it's difficult to find another solution, but working facing a wall for a brain is the worst we can do. I'd rather have you not work and work facing a wall, because it's really having no perspective, having a blockage, and the eyes also, because of our cells and how we function in terms of survival instinct, our eyes always have to see what's coming further. It's like a survival instinct to be able to control. And so working facing a wall is really facing a blockage. And since in the world we live in, many people also don't really see where they're going, they feel kind of lost, they are not sure about the fact that they like their work or not, they literally see that they have no perspective,
Hmm.
will just reinforce that feeling. So that's a big don't.
Hmm. And is it better if you don't have the possibility to have a separate room for the office? Would you say it's better to have your office in a bedroom or in the living room?
The living room.
Yeah.
In the bedroom, it's too much about like, again, it's your brain will produce what it sees. So if you work and you see your bed, you know it's not time to sleep, but your brain is going to produce the sleep hormone.
Hmm.
And fatigue is going to be experienced way more if you're sleeping, and even though it's dark, there is your office in the room, your brain will associate the room also to work, and so you'll think way more about work before going to sleep, which is already a big problem.
Hmm.
uh, so definitely not the bedroom. That's really a don't.
Okay. Cool. Well, I imagine that you have a lot of more to say on that topic, but you have different courses, right? All this that you propose to companies and to private people, so this way they can learn more about this. I wanted to also talk in this last part of our conversation
Yeah.
about urban spaces and cities.
Mhm.
I don't know if this is something which also lays into your field of expertise. But I was just curious to get your opinion on how we design urban spaces. Are there any cities in particular that you really loved because of their urban planning or architecture?
Yeah, of course. As it's less something I work with, of course, but I do have opinions.
Of
uh,
course.
it will be so many things to say about cities, but I think that one big aspect to take into consideration is color again.
Hmm.
Look at cities as Paris, that are cities that are known for being architecturally nothing to say. It's like magnificent, and I won't question that. But in terms of colors, it's very cold. It's like everything looks alike. It's gray, kind of
Hmm.
brown, beige, but there is no warm colors. And Paris is known for being kind of a sad city where it always rains, and everyone is like in depression. And it's kind of okay, it's a city that always moves, but it's also known as being kind of depressive.
Hmm.
Whereas you go to cities, as for now, for example, as I'm talking, I'm in Portugal, in Porto. That's a city with, it's like they have to put colors on their facade. It's like part of like the historical obligation. And so that means that there's color everywhere. And I gotta say, people are more happy than in, like, they look more happy. And then now I'll to go back to science, I'll never have the proof that it's because of color,
Of
because
course.
too many factors come into consideration. Of course, you have the temperature, you have the conditions, you have so many things to be able to say it's about the color. But I'm sure that cities that take that into consideration have a way better energy and vibe than cities where everything is very monochrome.
Mm-hmm. Well, I also think because recently moved to Lausanne in Switzerland, and what I really like, the first thing I noticed was that instead of having like big panels with advertisements in pubs, like here you actually have only advertisements of cultural events and like very little visual aggressive information. Also, there is very like the light which is used to lit the cities is also quite dim. It's not like very aggressive. And I actually noticed that it really has a major impact on how you feel in the city because you're not bombarded, you know, with like content saying that you're supposed to buy this or like be like that, you know. And what is your view on this? Is there something about
Yeah, it's
you've noticed yourself?
definitely exact. The problem is, and that's something that I've worked on my thesis back then. The problem is that I really think that we should society is not going to be better. It's not going to help. It's not going to help. We're going to as connected world as we can imagine actually, and so we're going to be targeted even more. So that means that now in urban cities you're going to come out of the street and you're going to see in 2 minutes the watch, or I don't know, the new television that you thought about yesterday. That means that we are constantly or the level of concentration is at its maximum. We are never not seeing something, because everything that we will see in the urban environments are going to be things that we're interested in. So that means that before you would walk in the street and maybe you would be off in your mind for a moment, and that would be like a moment of meditation and think about nothing. Today I think that if cities continue to evolve as they're evolving, it's not going to happen anymore. Everything is going to be triggering, everything is going to be something that we're interested in. So that means that our brain will be like activated all the time. And that's why I think it's so important to start working different with our homes environment, to have places where we can literally recharge.
Mhm.
Because I'm sure that we cannot, I'm sure, I mean, in my point of view, I'm believing that we cannot trust the cities to
Yeah.
lower our stress systems. And
Mhm.
they'll try things, they'll try to find new technology to tell us that it will lower our stress system. But I really believe that the only thing that we can really have to be in the present moment and to like disconnect is to disconnect also visually and be in a place where we really feel safe. And I'm not sure that's coming in urban environments.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I think that it would be possible, but Switzerland is quite specific when it comes to this kind of solutions. I am sure that in the majority of cities, it's just not that simple and not that possible, especially if you have really larger cities. So I understand what you're saying, that we should really not hope that somebody will take care of this in
Exactly.
urban spaces, but rather try to make sure that we disconnect and we feel comfortable at the place, at our places, at our homes. And have you heard about the concept of biophilic design? Yeah, probably. And so I read this article recently about this hypothesis that our modern architecture lacks fractal patterns, and
Mhm.
because of this lack of fractal patterns, that we cannot really relax when we are walking down the streets, for instance, because we have been designed to interact with nature where these fractal patterns are reoccurring, and that if we have them, then this allows our minds to kind of rest and relax and recharge. And that when we have these modern buildings and modern designs, they simply do not have this. What do you think about this concept? Do you think it's true? Is it something which is controversial, or is it like a certain thing in architecture?
It's honestly not really something I'm researching.
Hmm.
As I told you, I'm like really more about the more really therapeutical, psychological side of
Yeah.
everything on their own. So I wouldn't have like really, I think, an opinion about it. But I agree. I mean,
Hmm.
human being is connected to nature, and we need everything that connects us back to that.
Hmm.
Now, it's always about balancing that. That's the cause of stress and the main cause of stress. I wouldn't say that I agree either. It's always about balance, but of course, biophilic design is just a way of proving with science that we need nature again,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
I won't go against that, because
Yeah.
it's exactly what I'm studying and working
Yeah,
with.
I was just really amazed reading this article, and I was like, "Wow, does it even exist?" Because I remember, I mean, I know that fractals are kind of like a reoccurring thing in physics, and then like in psychology, sometimes you can also hear about this. But every time I feel like it's half like true and like it's really amazing, but then I'm not sure if it actually works. So I was really interested to find yeah, ask you what's your opinion on that. So but yeah, I understand that you're really coming from the point where yeah, nature is really important, so for you it doesn't really also matter if it's the fractals or something else. But um okay, well, we will be heading towards the end of our conversation, but before we do, I have two last questions that I ask my guests. So the first question would be, what is happiness?
Whoa. What is happiness? I think that happiness is just when you're able to connect to a feeling of joy, and it doesn't have to be all the time, but that you're able to connect to that feeling and to actually for a moment really live it, not in your head but in your body. And I think that's when we reach happiness, when we can connect to that feeling of joy pretty easily.
Mhm. And the second question would be, do you believe that one person can change the world? And if yes, then how? And if not, why not?
No. I
Yeah.
don't think so. Because I don't think that that the power lies in other people. I think that we all have it within ourselves and that we cannot rely on one person.
Mhm.
So I think that one person can make a big impact on the world, and that impact can change the world. But in the end, it's all going to be about what we're going to do as an individual to change the world. So I don't think one person could change the world.
Okay. Well, so thank you very much for the conversation. I really enjoyed it. I learned tons of interesting things.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I wish you lots of luck in your future endeavors. And also for our listeners, I will put the links to your website and Instagram and so on in the description. So if they want, they can check you out there.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me. It's been
Thank you.
a
Yeah,
pleasure.
thank you.
And I will see you back soon at Joyful. Cheers!